The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. Counselor Thrain, a towering reptilian being with scales that shifted from green to gold when, agitated, tapped his clawed fingers against the marble podium. His massive eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, swept across the assembled delegates with barely concealed irritation. "Fellow beings of the Council," Thrain's voice boomed through the Chamber's translation systems, "we face an unprecedented situation today. A species calling themselves humans has submitted an application for membership in our civilized union." He paused, his scales flickering to a deeper shade of amber. "However, their application contains claims so absurd that many of us question whether they possess the mental capacity required for galactic citizenship." From her seat in the insectoid section, Delegate Vis clicked her mandibles in agreement. Her compound eyes, each facet reflecting the chamber's crystalline lighting, focused on the holographic display that materialized above the central platform. The image showed a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star looking peaceful enough. From space. "This planet they call Earth," Vis said, her voice creating a chittering harmony through multiple vocal cords, "harbors creatures they describe as apex predators. According to their own documentation, these beasts possess razor-sharp claws, massive fangs, and the ability to kill other large creatures with ease." She gestured with one of her forearms toward the display. "Yet these humans claim to live alongside such monsters voluntarily." The chamber erupted in various sounds of disbelief. Some delegates hissed, others chirped, and a few made sounds that had no equivalent in any known language. Thrain raised his hand for silence. "The most disturbing claim," Thrain continued, his scales now pulsing with deep red patterns, "is their assertion that these apex predators can be trained and domesticated. They even suggest these creatures form emotional bonds with their species." He paused, letting the weight of this statement settle over the assembly. "As we all know from centuries of xenobiological research, apex predators are solitary hunters, driven purely by instinct. They lack the neural complexity for higher reasoning, emotional attachment, or any form of loyalty beyond their own survival needs." Dr. Neth, a gaseous being whose thoughts manifested as shifting patterns of colored light within his containment suit, pulsed with shades of deep blue skepticism. "Perhaps these humans are simply delusional about their relationship with these creatures. Many primitive species develop superstitions about their planet's dangerous fauna." "Or," suggested Ambassador Rill, whose crystalline form resonated with harmonic frequencies, "they may be attempting to deceive us about their true nature. Perhaps they are the apex predators of their world, and these other creatures are their prey animals that they keep for food." The debate continued for several more minutes until the chamber's main doors opened with a soft hiss. A figure walked through that made every delegate in the room freeze in place. She appeared to be bipedal, roughly humanoid in shape, with pale skin and dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail. Dr. Maya Rivers wore simple clothes and carried a small bag over her shoulder. She walked with confident strides, her head held high despite being surrounded by beings that could easily crush her with minimal effort, but it was not the human that caused the chamber to fall into stunned silence. Walking beside her, moving with fluid grace and predatory awareness, was a creature that made every survival instinct in the room scream warnings of immediate danger. The tiger was massive, standing nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder and stretching over 9 feet from nose to tail. His orange coat was marked with black stripes that seemed to shift and flow as he moved. Storm's amber eyes swept the chamber with intelligent calculation, taking in every delegate, every exit, every potential threat or advantage. His massive paws, each capable of delivering bone-crushing force, made no sound as they touched the polished floor. Several delegates scrambled backward in their seats. Ambassador Rill's crystalline form began resonating at panic frequencies. Vis's compound eyes dilated to maximum aperture, a defensive response her species had evolved when facing immediate mortal danger. Maya seemed completely unaware of the terror her companion inspired. She approached the central platform with calm confidence, one hand resting gently on Storm's neck. The tiger walked with her as if they had done this countless times before, his massive head occasionally turning to look at something that caught his interest, but always returning his attention to his human companion. "Honored council members," Maya began, her voice steady, despite speaking to beings who could order the destruction of her entire world with a simple vote. "I am Dr. Maya Rivers, xenobiologist and Earth's chosen representative for this membership application. This is my research partner and friend, Storm." The word friend caused another wave of agitated sounds throughout the chamber. Thrain's scales had shifted to patterns of red and black that indicated extreme alarm. His voice, when he found it, carried undertones of disbelief and horror. "Dr. Rivers," he said slowly, "are you seriously claiming that this apex predator is your friend? Do you not understand that the creature beside you is a killing machine designed by evolution for one purpose only?" Maya tilted her head slightly, a gesture that Storm seemed to recognize because his ears twitched forward in what appeared to be amusement. Storm has never killed anything except for food, and only when hunting was necessary for survival. He has lived with humans for most of his life and has formed deep emotional bonds with several of us. He protects human children, mourns when human friends die, and shows complex problem-solving abilities that rival most sentient species. "Impossible," Guvis chittered, her mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "Apex predators cannot form emotional attachments. They lack the neural pathways for complex social behavior beyond basic pack-hunting instincts." "With respect," Maya replied, "perhaps your understanding of apex predators is limited by your own experiences." "Storm, sit." The massive tiger immediately settled into a sitting position, his powerful haunches folding beneath him while his front legs remained straight. His amber eyes remained alert and intelligent, watching the council members with what could only be described as curiosity. The simple act of obedience, performed without fear or hesitation, sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. "This proves nothing," Thrain declared, though his voice carried less certainty than before. "Even primitive conditioning can create basic behavioral responses. Your creature may respond to simple commands, but it cannot truly understand or form genuine emotional connections." Maya smiled, an expression that several delegates found difficult to interpret. "Perhaps we should discuss what you consider proof of intelligence and emotional capacity. Storm here has solved complex puzzles, demonstrated grief when separated from friends, and even shown what humans call empathy by comforting other creatures in distress." Storm's tail swished once, apparently in response to hearing his name mentioned, and his gaze moved from delegate to delegate with such obvious intelligence that several more representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The session was about to become far more interesting than anyone had anticipated. The emergency session continued for 3 hours as Maya presented evidence of human-predator partnerships. She showed holographic recordings of tigers hunting cooperatively with humans, wolves serving as companions to human children, and even great white sharks accepting food from human divers without aggression. Each piece of evidence was met with increasingly desperate explanations from the council delegates. "Clearly, these creatures are simply responding to food conditioning," insisted Dr. Neff, his gaseous form flickering through patterns of stubborn orange. "No true apex predator would willingly associate with another species unless driven by hunger or desperation." Counselor Thrain had spent the better part of an hour examining the data with growing frustration. His scales had settled into a pattern of deep purple, indicating confusion mixed with anger. "Dr. Rivers, what you are showing us contradicts fundamental laws of evolutionary biology. Apex predators are solitary by nature. They compete with other apex predators for territory and resources. The concept of cooperation between species, especially voluntary cooperation, has never been observed in any known ecosystem. Perhaps?" Maya replied calmly, stroking Storm's massive head as he lay beside her chair. "The problem is that you have never encountered apex predators quite like Earth's. Our planet developed differently than yours, Ambassador Rill's crystalline form resonated with frequencies of deep skepticism. Evolution follows universal principles, Dr. Rivers. Predator behavior is consistent across all known worlds. What you describe is simply impossible according to established xenobiological science. Gavis clicked her mandibles in agreement. We have studied apex predators from 17 different worlds. Without exception, they are driven by instinct alone. They hunt, they eat, they reproduce, and they die. There is no room in their neural architecture for higher reasoning or emotional attachment. Maya leaned forward slightly, her expression growing more serious. What if your observations have been limited because you have only studied these creatures as specimens rather than as individuals? What if the behavior you have documented represents fear and defensive responses rather than true nature? The suggestion caused an uproar in the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the translation system struggled to handle. Thrain slammed his massive fist against the podium, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. Enough, he roared, his scales now blazing with patterns of red and gold. Dr. Rivers, your claims are not only unscientific but potentially dangerous. If other species begin to believe that apex predators can be domesticated, the result will be catastrophic loss of life. Furthermore, added Gvis, her compound eyes fixed on Storm with obvious unease, your presence here with that creature puts every delegate in this chamber at risk. How do we know it will not revert to its predatory nature and attack without warning? Storm's ears twitched at the tone of hostility in Gvis's voice, but he remained calmly beside Maya's chair. His amber eyes moved from speaker to speaker with obvious intelligence, as if he were following the conversation despite not understanding the words. I can guarantee Storm's behavior, Maya said firmly. He has been around thousands of humans throughout his life and has never shown unprovoked aggression toward any sentient being. Guarantees mean nothing when dealing with apex predators, Thrain declared. To prove our point about the true nature of these creatures, the Council will arrange a demonstration. His scales shifted to patterns of dark satisfaction. We will show you what happens when your pet encounters a real apex predator. Maya felt a chill run down her spine at the tone in Thrain's voice. What kind of demonstration? Dr. Neth's gaseous form pulsed with excited yellow patterns? We have in our research facility a captured specimen from the death world of Grimm, a creature known as a Vorthek. It represents everything we know to be true about apex predator behavior. The Vorthek, Fis added with obvious satisfaction, is the most dangerous predator in our sector. Standing 8 feet tall with crystalline scales and plasma breath, it has been responsible for the extinction of 3 separate civilizations. It kills everything it encounters, shows no fear, and cannot be reasoned with or contained for long periods. Thrain's eyes gleamed with anticipation. We will place your creature in an arena with the Vorthek. When faced with a true apex predator, your pet will either flee in terror or be killed instantly. This will demonstrate the reality of predator behavior and end these dangerous delusions about domestication. Maya's hand tightened on Storm's fur, feeling the powerful muscles beneath his coat. The tiger seemed to sense her tension because his head turned to look at her with those intelligent, amber eyes. For a moment, human and tiger shared a look of understanding that none of the council members could interpret. And if Storm does not flee or get killed? Maya asked quietly. Impossible, Thrain declared. But if by some miracle your creature survives the encounter, we will consider your application for membership. However, when it fails, as it certainly will, humanity will be barred from ever applying to the Galactic Council again. You are asking me to risk Storm's life to prove a point, Maya said, her voice carrying an edge that several delegates recognized as dangerous despite her small size. We are offering you an opportunity to prove your claims, Ambassador Rill corrected, his crystalline form resonating with frequencies of smug certainty. If these creatures are truly as intelligent and trainable as you suggest, then surely your pet will find a way to survive. Maya looked down at Storm, who was now watching her with complete attention. His tail swished once, a gesture she had learned to recognize as his way of saying he was ready for whatever came next. The bond between them was something these beings could not understand, forged through years of trust, respect, and genuine affection. "When would this demonstration take place?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Thrain replied immediately. "The arena is already being prepared. The Vorthak will be transported from its containment facility tonight. And if I refuse?" Vis's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Then humanity's application will be rejected immediately and you will be escorted from our space, with the recommendation that no civilized species should ever make contact with your world." Maya realized this was not really a choice at all. The Council had already decided that humanity was too dangerous to join the galactic community. This demonstration was simply their way of providing justification for that decision. They expected Storm to be killed, which would prove that humans could not control their apex predators and were, therefore, a threat to civilized species everywhere. "Very well," Maya said finally. "We accept your challenge." Storm looked up at her and made a soft chuffing sound that she recognized as his expression of confidence. He had no idea what a Vorthik was or why the aliens seemed so afraid of it, but he trusted Maya completely. If she said they needed to face this challenge, then he would face it with her. The delegates began filing out of the chamber, their various forms of communication buzzing with excitement and anticipation. They were certain they would witness the end of humanity's delusions tomorrow. None of them noticed the way Storm's eyes followed their movements, cataloging each delegate's size, speed, and potential threat level with the calculating intelligence of a predator who had learned to think rather than simply react. Maya spent the evening in their assigned quarters, reviewing everything she knew about predator behavior and interspecies communication. Storm lay beside her, occasionally lifting his massive head to nuzzle her hand when her stress levels became too high. Tomorrow would test everything they had learned together, but tonight they simply enjoyed each other's company as they had. For so many years, neither of them slept much, but for very different reasons than the council delegates expected. Maya woke before dawn and found Storm already awake, sitting by the viewport and watching the stars. His amber eyes reflected the distant light, giving him an almost ethereal appearance in the dim quarters. She joined him at the window, placing her hand on his powerful shoulder. "Ready for today, big guy?" she whispered. Storm made a soft rumbling sound in his chest, a purr so low it was more felt than heard. He had been her companion for 7 years, and in that time they had faced dangers together that would have terrified most humans. But today felt different. Today they were not just representing themselves but their entire species. After a quick breakfast, Maya requested permission to observe the Vorthek before the demonstration. The council granted this request, though Councillor Thrain warned her that she could only observe from outside the containment area. The research facility was located in the lower levels of the orbital station, far from the main living quarters. As Maya and Storm walked through the corridors, they passed various alien scientists and researchers who stopped to stare at the massive tiger. Some quickly moved to the opposite side of the hallway, while others watched with fascination as Storm padded silently beside Maya without any visible restraints. Dr. Neth met them at the facility entrance. His gaseous form contained within a mobile atmospheric suit that allowed him to travel through areas with different environmental conditions. "Dr. Rivers, I must warn you that the Vorthik is extremely dangerous even while contained. Several researchers have suffered psychological trauma simply from observing it." Maya nodded but said nothing. Storm's ears were forward, alert to new sounds and smells as they entered the facility. The tiger had learned to trust Maya's judgment about dangerous situations, but his predatory instincts were fully active in this unfamiliar environment. The containment area was a massive chamber surrounded by multiple layers of energy barriers. At its center, separated from the observation area by transparent aluminum walls and electromagnetic fields, was the Vorthek. Maya's first sight of the creature made her understand why the aliens were so terrified. The Vorthek stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, its body covered in crystalline scales that shifted from deep blue to purple as it moved. Its head was elongated like a valve's but larger, with rows of teeth that gleamed like polished metal. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could slice through most known materials. But it was the eyes that truly made the creature terrifying. They glowed with an inner fire, intelligent and filled with rage. As they watched, the vortex suddenly turned and blasted a stream of superheated plasma at the energy barrier. The containment field held, but the display of raw destructive power made several of the alien observers step backward in fear. "It has been doing that every few minutes since its capture," Dr. Neff explained. "Pure aggressive instinct. No reasoning. No pattern, just mindless violence." Maya studied the creature more carefully, her years of animal behavior training kicking in automatically. Storm sat beside her, also watching the vortex with interest rather than fear. After several minutes of observation, Maya began to notice things the aliens had missed. "It is not random," she said quietly. "What?" Dr. Neth's form flickered with confused orange patterns. "The plasma attacks, they are not random." Maya pointed to the containment field. "Look at where it aims. It is testing different sections of the barrier, trying to find weaknesses. And watch its body language before each attack." She was right. Before each plasma blast, the vortex would lower its head and shift its weight in a specific way. Its tail would sweep in a particular pattern, and its eyes would focus intensely on the target area. This was not mindless aggression but calculated testing. "It is trying to escape," Maya continued. "But more than that, it is trying to establish territorial dominance. Look at how it positions itself in the center of the containment area. It is claiming that space as its own." Storm made a soft chuffing sound, and Maya realized he was responding to something she had not yet noticed. The tiger was reading the vortex body language with the instinctive understanding of one predator observing another. "What do you see, Storm?" she asked softly. The tiger's ears twitched, and he made another sound, this one longer and more complex. Maya had learned to interpret many of Storm's vocalizations over the years. This one meant confusion mixed with curiosity. "He sees something we are missing," Maya told Dr. Neff. "Storm recognizes predator behavior, but this is not quite what he expected." Over the next hour, Maya continued observing the vortex while Storm provided his own predatory perspective. Gradually, a picture began to emerge that contradicted everything the aliens believed about the creature. The vortex was not just aggressive, it was terrified. Its plasma attacks were not random violence, but desperate attempts to establish some sense of control in a situation where it had none. The creature was displaying classic signs of stress and confinement trauma that Maya had seen in Earth's apex predators when they were kept in inappropriate conditions. "Dr. Neff," Maya said eventually, "how long has this creature been in captivity?" "Approximately 6 months. It was captured after destroying a research outpost on Grimm." "And during that time, has anyone attempted to communicate with it or provide environmental enrichment?" Dr. Neff's form pulsed with bewildered yellow. "Communicate? Dr. Rivers, it is an apex predator. It cannot be communicated with any more than you could have a conversation with an asteroid." Maya walked closer to the containment barrier, ignoring the warnings from the facility staff. Storm followed, his massive form moving with the fluid grace that marked him as a supreme predator. As they approached, the vortex stopped its pacing and focused its burning eyes on them. For a long moment, human, tiger, and alien predator studied each other through the barriers. Then Maya did something that made every researcher in the room gasp in horror. She sat down cross-legged in front of the containment field and began to speak in a low, calm voice. "Hello there," she said softly. "I know you cannot understand my words, but maybe you can understand my tone. You are scared and, angry and alone, are you not?" The vortex tilted its massive head, its glowing eyes fixed on Maya with obvious intelligence. Storm settled beside her, also focusing his attention on the alien predator. For the first time since its capture, the vortex stopped moving and simply watched. "You are not from here," Maya continued. "You were taken from your home and brought to this place where everything is strange and frightening. You attack the barriers because it is the only way you can express your frustration. The creature took a step closer to the barrier, its crystalline scales shifting to lighter shades of blue. Its breathing became less agitated, and the glow in its eyes dimmed slightly. "I think you understand more than they believe," Maya whispered. "I think you are trying to communicate, but nobody has been listening." Storm made a soft rumbling sound in his chest, the same sound he used to calm other animals when Maya worked with them. The Vorthak's ears, which had been flat against its skull, twitched upward slightly. Dr. Neth's form was now pulsing rapid patterns of alarm and disbelief. "Dr. Rivers, you need to move away from the barrier immediately. The creature is preparing to attack." But Maya had spent years learning to read predator body language, and what she saw was not preparation for attack. The Vorthak was relaxing. Its rigid posture was softening, and its tail had stopped the aggressive sweeping motion it had maintained since their arrival. "It is not preparing to attack," Maya said without taking her eyes off the creature. "It is trying to decide whether we are a threat." For the next 20 minutes, Maya sat quietly with Storm beside the containment barrier. The Vorthak gradually moved closer until it was lying down just a few feet from the energy field. Its glowing eyes remained fixed on Maya and Storm, but the rage had been replaced by curiosity when Maya finally stood to leave. The Vorthak rose as well and moved to the section of barrier closest to her. It made a sound unlike anything the researchers had heard before, not a roar or snarl, but something almost like a question. Maya looked back at the creature and smiled sadly. "Tomorrow will be interesting, will it not? I hope we can find a better way to understand each other." As they left the facility, Dr. Neth was uncharacteristically quiet. His gaseous form had settled into patterns of deep blue confusion. He had observed apex predators for decades, and what he had just witnessed challenged everything he thought he knew about their behavior. Storm walked beside Maya with his tail swishing thoughtfully. He had recognized something in the alien predator that the researchers could not see: intelligence, loneliness, and a desperate desire to be understood. Tomorrow would test not just their ability to survive an encounter with the Vorthak, but their ability to bridge the gap between species that had never learned to communicate. Maya spent the rest of the day planning, not for a battle, but for a conversation between predators who spoke different languages, but shared the same fundamental needs for understanding and respect. The arena was massive, larger than most sports stadiums Maya had seen on Earth. Its floor was covered with synthetic materials designed to absorb energy blasts and resist claw damage. Multiple viewing platforms surrounded the central area, filled with delegates from across the galaxy who had come to witness what they believed would be the end of humanity's delusions about apex predator domestication. Cil or Thrain stood at the primary observation platform, his scales displaying patterns of satisfied anticipation. Fellow council members, today we will finally put to rest the dangerous fiction that apex predators can form emotional bonds or be trained for cooperation. When faced with a true killing machine, the human's pet will reveal its authentic nature. Maya stood at the arena entrance, her hand resting on Storm's massive neck. The tiger was alert but calm, his amber eyes scanning the arena as he catalogued potential dangers and advantages. His breathing was steady, and his posture showed readiness without aggression. "Remember what we discussed?" Maya whispered to her companion. "This is not about dominance or territory. This is about communication." Storm made a soft chuffing sound, his way of acknowledging her words. He had learned over the years to trust Maya's assessment of dangerous situations. Even when his predatory instincts suggested different approaches, the opposite end of the arena opened with a mechanical grinding sound, and the Vorthak emerged from its transport container. The creature was even more impressive in the open space, its crystalline scales catching the arena lights and creating shifting patterns of blue and purple across its massive form. It stood motionless for a moment, taking in its new environment with obvious intelligence. A collective gasp rose from the viewing platforms as delegates saw the Vorthak in action for the first time. Several smaller species moved to the back of their observation areas, instinctively seeking distance from even this contained encounter with the galaxy's most feared predator. Release the human's creature, Thrain commanded. Let us see what happens when two apex predators meet without the protection of energy barriers. The gate beside Maya opened, but Storm did not immediately enter the arena. Instead, he looked up at Maya, waiting for her signal. This simple act of patience and trust sent murmurs through the crowd of observers. No apex predator should wait for permission when faced with a territorial challenge. Go ahead, Storm, Maya said quietly. Remember what we talked about. Storm padded into the arena with fluid grace, his massive paws making no sound on the synthetic floor. He moved with the confident stride of a predator who had learned that intelligence was often more valuable than raw strength. The Vorthek watched. His approach with glowing eyes, its head tilted in what appeared to be curiosity rather than immediate aggression. Maya followed Storm into the arena, ignoring the horrified sounds from the viewing platforms. Several delegates called for her to retreat, warning that she was about to witness the death of her companion. But Maya had spent years learning to read predator behavior, and what she saw between Storm and the Vorthek was not the prelude to a fight. The two creatures stopped approximately 20 feet apart and began what could only be described as an assessment. Storm's ears were forward, alert, but not pinned back in fear or aggression. His tail swished slowly, a sign of interest rather than irritation. The Vorthek's crystalline scales had shifted to lighter shades of blue, and its breathing remained steady and controlled. Impossible, Dr. Neth muttered from the observation platform. They should be attacking each other by now. Territorial instincts should have triggered immediate violence. But Maya understood what the alien scientists could not see. These were not two mindless killing machines driven by instinct. They were intelligent predators capable of complex assessment and decision-making. Storm had learned through years of human contact that not every encounter required violence, while the Vorthek was demonstrating the same intelligent caution that had kept its species alive on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. Maya began to speak, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. Storm, do you remember what we learned about communication with unfamiliar predators? The tiger's ears twitched, and he slowly lowered himself into a resting position. Not submission, but a clear signal that he was not seeking conflict. The Vorthek tilted its massive head, watching this unexpected behavior with obvious interest. Good boy, Maya said softly. Now show our new friend that we come in peace. Storm made a sound that Maya had learned was his equivalent of a greeting call, a low rumble that carried no threat but conveyed acknowledgement of another predator's presence. The sound was unlike anything the council delegates had heard from an apex predator, lacking the aggressive undertones they expected from territorial encounters. The Vorthek responded with its own vocalization, a complex sound that seemed to have multiple harmonic layers. Maya realized this was the same type of sound the creature had made when she first approached its containment area, not a threat, but an attempt at communication. It is trying to talk to Storm, Maya called up to the observation platforms. Listen to the complexity of those sounds. This is not random noise or aggressive posturing. This is language. Counselor Thrain's scales flickered with patterns of disbelief and anger. Apex predators do not have language. They communicate through body posture and chemical signals at most. But what happened next challenged everything the council thought. They knew about predator behavior. Storm rose from his resting position and began to move in a slow circle around the Vorthek, not stalking but displaying the same type of careful approach he used when meeting new animals under Maya's care. The Vorthek remained motionless, allowing Storm to complete his circle before making its own assessment movement. The alien predator lowered its massive head and made another complex vocalization, this one clearly directed at Storm. The tiger responded with his own sound, different from his greeting call but equally non-threatening. For several minutes, the two apex predators engaged in what could only be described as a conversation conducted through vocalizations and body language. Maya moved closer, her trained eye cataloging every gesture and sound. Storm is explaining. "That we are not from this place," she called to the observers. "He is using the same body language he learned for communicating with unfamiliar pack animals." "And the Vorthek is responding," added Dr. Neth, his gaseous form now pulsing with patterns of amazement rather than fear. "It is actually engaging in cooperative communication." The breakthrough came when Storm approached within 10 feet of the Vorthek and lay down again, this time extending one massive paw toward the alien creature. The gesture was unmistakably an invitation, the same behavior he used when introducing Maya to new animals that needed to build trust gradually. The Vorthek studied the offered paw for a long moment, then slowly lowered its own massive form to the arena floor. Instead of responding with aggression or territorial display, it carefully extended one clawed appendage toward Storm's paw. The two predators made brief contact, their respective weapons touching in a gesture of mutual respect. Rather than combat, the arena fell completely silent. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy watched in stunned amazement as two apex predators, species that had never encountered each other before, established peaceful communication through patience and intelligence rather than violence and dominance. Maya approached the two creatures slowly, her heart racing with the implications of what was happening. "Storm, can you ask our friend about the sounds it makes? The complex ones with multiple tones?" Storm made another vocalization, this one with questioning inflections that Maya had learned to recognize over the years. The Vorthek responded immediately, opening its massive jaws and releasing a controlled stream of plasma that created intricate patterns in the air above them. The plasma burned at different temperatures, creating a display of lights and colors that was clearly intentional and artistic. "It is not just communication," Maya whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "It is art. The plasma breath is not just a weapon, it is a form of expression." The demonstration continued for another hour as Storm and the Vorthek developed an increasingly complex form of communication. They shared different types of vocalizations, responded to each other's body language, and even began to engage in what appeared to be play behavior when the Vorthek created small plasma sculptures that Storm would carefully investigate. When Media finally called for the demonstration to end, both predators seemed reluctant to separate. Storm made a sound that Maya recognized as his expression of friendship, while the Vorthek responded with a complex plasma display that seemed almost like a farewell greeting. As they left the arena, the viewing platforms remained silent. Every delegate struggled to process what they had witnessed. Two apex predators from different worlds establishing communication and cooperation. Within hours of first meeting, everything they thought they knew about predator behavior had been proven wrong by a human woman and her tiger companion. Counselor Thrain's scales had shifted to patterns of deep purple confusion. For the first time in his long career, he was forced to confront the possibility that the Council's understanding of apex predators was fundamentally flawed. The demonstration was over, but the real conversation was just beginning. The Council chamber had never been so quiet. For nearly an hour after the arena demonstration, delegates sat in stunned silence as they tried to process what they had witnessed. The fundamental assumptions that had guided galactic civilization for thousands of years had been challenged by a human woman and two apex predators who chose communication over violence. Counselor Thrain was the first to break the silence, his scales displaying patterns of deep confusion mixed with reluctant acceptance. "Dr. Rivers, what we observe today contradicts centuries of established xenobiological science. How do you explain what happened in that arena?" Mayo stood beside Storm, who was calmly grooming one massive paw as if the day's events had been nothing more than an interesting training exercise. The Vorthek had been returned to a larger, more comfortable containment area where researchers could continue studying its newly revealed communication abilities. "The explanation is simple," Maya replied. "Your scientists have been studying apex predators as specimens rather than as individuals. When you capture a creature, isolate it from its natural environment, and treat it as nothing more than a dangerous animal, you see only fear and aggression in response." Dr. Neth's gaseous form pulsed with curious patterns as he processed this information. Are you suggesting that the aggressive behavior we have documented from apex predators is not their natural state? Exactly, Maya confirmed. Storm here was born in captivity, but he was raised with respect, companionship, and intellectual stimulation. He learned that not every encounter requires violence because he was taught that cooperation often yields better results than conflict. Delegate. Gvis clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. But how does this explain the Vorthak's behavior? It was captured as an adult specimen from its natural environment. It should have been impossible to modify its behavioral patterns. Maya walked closer to the central platform, Storm padding silently beside her. The Vorthak was not modified. It was simply allowed to express its natural intelligence for the first time since its capture. What you interpreted as mindless aggression was actually sophisticated communication attempts that nobody bothered to understand. She gestured toward the display screen that showed recordings from the arena encounter. Look at the plasma patterns it created during our demonstration. Those, were not random energy discharges. They were complex, artistic expressions with mathematical precision and aesthetic beauty. The Vorthak has been trying to communicate through art, and everyone assumed it was simply trying to kill. Ambassador Rill's crystalline form resonated with frequencies of dawning comprehension. You are suggesting that we have been fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of apex predator intelligence. Not just intelligence, Maya replied. Emotional complexity, social needs, and communication abilities. Storm mourns when friends die, celebrates when new relationships are formed, and actively seeks intellectual challenges. The Vorthak demonstrated similar emotional responses today when it created those plasma sculptures for Storm to investigate. Counselor. Thrain's scales shifted to patterns of uncomfortable realization. If what you are saying is true, then the Council has been responsible for the psychological torture of highly intelligent beings for centuries. Perhaps, Maya said gently. But now you have the opportunity to change that understanding and develop new approaches to interspecies communication. Storm made a soft chuffing sound and moved to the center of the chamber where everyone could see him clearly. Without any command from Maya, he sat in the formal position that indicated he was ready to demonstrate something important. His amber eyes swept the assembled delegates with obvious intelligence and purpose. Storm wants to show you something, Maya said with a smile. He has been listening to our conversation and understands that this is about more than just proving a point. The tiger began to vocalize, producing a series of sounds that were clearly structured and intentional. The complex patterns rose and fell with musical precision, creating harmonies that several species found unexpectedly beautiful. Storm was not just making noise, he was performing what could only be described as a song. He learned this from watching human musicians, Maya explained as Storm continued his performance. Tigers in the wild have limited vocalizations, but Storm has expanded his repertoire through exposure to human culture and the intellectual stimulation of learning new forms of expression. When Storm finished his song, he looked directly at Counselor Thrain and made a different sound, a questioning vocalization that was clearly directed at the reptilian leader. The intent was unmistakable. Storm was asking for a response. Thrain stared at the massive predator for a long moment, his scales cycling through patterns of uncertainty and wonder. Finally, he cleared his throat and made a formal greeting gesture that his species used for diplomatic encounters. Storm's ears perked forward with obvious interest, and he attempted to mimic the gesture with his own body language. Remarkable, Dr. Neth whispered, his gaseous form now pulsing with excited golden patterns. It is actively learning diplomatic protocols through observation and attempting to engage in formal interspecies communication. Delegate Gvis leaned forward in her seat, her compound eyes focused intently on Storm. Dr. Rivers, how many other apex predators on your world demonstrate similar capabilities? Most of them, when given the opportunity, Maya replied. Wolves develop complex pack hierarchies that include elements of democracy and consensus building. Great cats like Storm show individual personalities and emotional bonds that last for decades. Even species we once considered purely instinct-driven like sharks, demonstrate problem-solving abilities and social learning when studied properly. And humans have formed partnerships with all of these creatures. Ambassador Rill asked, his crystalline form resonating with amazement. Not partnerships exactly, Maya clarified. Relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. We learned that apex predators are not obstacles to be overcome or threats to be eliminated, but individuals with their own needs, desires, and forms of intelligence. Storm padded over to where Delegate Vis sat and carefully placed himself in a position where she could observe him closely without feeling threatened. He made a soft rumbling sound that Maya recognized as his greeting call, then waited patiently for her response. Vis hesitated for a moment, then clicked her mandibles in the pattern her species used for acknowledgement. Storm's tail swished, once with apparent satisfaction, and he made another sound that was clearly a response to her communication attempt. He's trying to learn our languages, Vis realized with wonder. Not just responding to commands, but actively attempting to engage in conversation. That, said Maya, is exactly what I have been trying to explain. Apex predators are not mindless killing machines. They are intelligent beings capable of learning, growing, and forming relationships across species boundaries. Counselor Thrain rose from his seat, his scales now displaying patterns of formal decision-making. Dr. Rivers, the Council requires time to process these revelations and their implications for our understanding of apex predator behavior. However, I believe I speak for all delegates when I say that what we have witnessed today demands a complete reevaluation of our scientific assumptions. More than that, added Dr. Neff, it suggests that we may have been committing grave ethical violations against intelligent beings simply because we failed to recognize their cognitive abilities. Maya nodded gravely. The Vorthak, for instance, has been isolated for months without any attempt at communication or environmental enrichment. For a highly intelligent social being, that isolation would be a form of psychological torture. What do you recommend? Asked Ambassador Rill. Start by treating apex predators as individuals rather than specimens, Maya replied. Provide intellectual stimulation, social interaction when possible, and most importantly, attempt to establish communication rather than assuming it is impossible. Storm moved to stand beside Maya, his massive form radiating calm confidence. He had done what she asked of him, demonstrating that apex predators could engage in complex communication and cooperative behavior when treated with respect and understanding. The vote on humanity's membership application, Counselor Thrain announced, is postponed pending further study of these new findings. Dr. Rivers, the Council formally requests that you remain as our consultant while we develop new protocols for apex predator research and communication. Additionally, Vis added, we request permission to establish a communication research program with the Vorthak, using the techniques you have demonstrated today. Maya looked down at Storm, who met her gaze with those intelligent amber eyes. We accept, she said simply. But with one condition, any research must be conducted with the understanding that these creatures are not test subjects but individuals deserving of respect and ethical treatment. Agreed, Thrain replied, his scales now showing patterns of genuine respect rather than mere tolerance. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, many stopped to observe Storm more closely. The massive tiger accepted their attention with dignified patience, occasionally making soft sounds that several species recognized as attempts at communication. Dr. Neff approached Maya as she prepared to leave. Dr. Rivers, I have spent decades studying apex predators, and everything I thought I knew has been proven wrong today. How long will it take to establish meaningful communication with the Vorthak? Maya smiled as Storm padded over to investigate the gaseous scientist's containment suit with friendly curiosity. That depends on how willing you are to listen rather than simply observe. Storm and I did not develop our communication overnight. It took years of patience, respect, and mutual learning. But, she added, watching Storm attempt to engage Dr. Neff in conversation through careful body language, if today has taught us anything, it is that the capacity for communication exist in species we never thought possible. We just need to learn how to speak their languages instead of expecting them to speak ours. Storm made one final sound as they left the chamber, a complex vocalization that Maya had learned meant contentment and accomplishment. He had helped change the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be an apex predator, proving that intelligence and cooperation could triumph over fear and misunderstanding. The demonstration was complete, but the real work of building bridges between species was just beginning. And Storm, as always, was ready to follow Maya's lead into whatever challenges awaited them among the stars.